We interrupt this program to inform you about important information from the Second Amendment that you might not know. First of all, the Second Amendment is the right to keep and bear arms. This does not mean you can go to the grocery store carrying around grenades and other weapons of mass destruction, because you will probably get arrested due to the fact that this amendment is not unlimited. Sir William Blackstone, 18th century judge and politician, described this right as an auxiliary right supporting the natural rights of self-defense, resistant to oppression, and the civic duty to act in concert in defense of the state. The way that this amendment describes self-defense can be categorized into 3 different ways. Number 1, the other person lunges at you and tries to punch you, you can protect yourself by fighting back. Number 2, if you fight back and the other person gives up or is unable to defend himself, you can't continue to hit him. It's an unreasonable use of force. Number 3, if the other person doesn't come close enough to you to actually hit you, he doesn't have a weapon, or he starts to walk away, you can't chase him or hit him. There is no threat of harm. Another thing that Sir William Blackstone mentioned was the resistance of oppression. The meaning of that is the feeling of being heavily burdened mentally or physically by troubles, adverse conditions, or people, and anxiety. The concept of recreational shooting, competition, and hunting was not a consideration for the authors of the Second Amendment. Having just come out of 3 decades of conflict, their concern was to maintain the freedoms that so many suffered to achieve. Acknowledging that each man could fight in their own way, the assumption was that at some point arms may be necessary, and that we, new citizens of the United States, would want to continue to take an active role in the preservation of those freedoms. Some things that people tend to forget is that a gun is not a magical item purchased to make you feel safer. Firearm ownership comes with responsibility and commitment. You must remember that through negligence and malicious action, it can kill you or others. Operating a gun without instruction is irresponsible, and not being prepared to fight with it is dangerous. The objective is to minimize as much tragedy as possible. Law-abiding Americans are meant to be armed if that is their choice. What needs to be emphasized is education, training, and vigilance. If fighting with a gun could be a plausible outcome for you, recognize that you cannot apply skill you do not have at the moment when you need it. Owning a gun is not just exercising your freedom, but it is committing to protect American freedoms. Now that you know the basic meanings of this amendment, I'm going to share with you the history and how this amendment came to be. The Second Amendment is a part of the Bill of Rights, which are the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution and the framework to elucidate upon the freedoms of an individual. The person who originally proposed this amendment was James Madison. This amendment was ratified as a way to provide more power to the state's militias, known as the National Guard. Since its ratification in 1791, the Second Amendment has remained in relative obscurity. Virtually ignored by the Supreme Court, the amendment has been termed obsolete, defunct, and an unused provision, with no meaning for the 20th century by the scholars dealing with the Bill of Rights. In 1876, the court ruled that the right to bear arms was a natural right and not a right granted or created by the Constitution. In 1886, the court ruled out that the Second Amendment only limited the federal government for prohibiting gun ownership, not the states. In 2008, the court ruled out that the Second Amendment protects an individual's rights to possess a firearm to use for traditionally lawful purposes, such as defending oneself within their home or on their property. Did you know that armed citizens are less likely to be injured by an attacker, and the number of defensive guns used may be as high as 2.1 million to 2.5 million times a year? Also, a recent survey has concluded that the United States has 88.9 firearms for every 100 people. That's more than Yemen, Mexico, Pakistan, and West Bank all combined.